With no further ado, it's my favorite person in our business, a true real friend, and someone I worked with at Fox for many years. And then, of course, now at NFL Network. In an alternate world, we have the number one podcast in the universe, and we're just crushing it together. Mike Garafolo, hello.
Parallel universe. Is that what it is? Yeah, I
A
dig it.
parallel, alternate, like, and there's still plenty of time for us to eventually just run
Could be
away.
this
You know,
universe
it
eventually.
could
Yeah.
be. It's like I feel like we're Thelma and Louise, just in the car. Just let's just hold hands and go. All right. So the Rappaport Schultz thing. I'm not going to get into Jordan Schultz and who he is, or Ian Rapoport and what he's all about, but they have their conflict. But to go behind the scenes as PFT commenter and Mike Florio write up these odes and these explanations. How I found out was a text chain of separate NFL people that you're included on, and just hilarity ensuing with jokes and memes.
Yeah.
You were there that day. What do you want to share?
Uh, so I'll cop to the picture. That was my picture that I took. Now I didn't leak the picture. Okay, if
No.
I did leak the picture, TMZ would have had it, and I would have had 10 grand in my pocket, which is probably what I should have done.
Did
Uh,
TMZ run the picture of Schultz
they,
hulking over
I,
Rappaport?
I don't know, but they wrote a story on it. So if they wrote a story on it, they think it's news, and if they think it's news, they would have loved the visual.
Yep,
So way to go, dummy! Could have made
it's
five figures
fine.
on this one.
Yep.
Um, But here's how I can cop to this and tell you that I took it, but I didn't leak it because I was actually setting that picture live, right? I was like, "Hey, look who's having a chat," and I thought,
As like giggling, like look,
"Yeah,
these two are
yeah,
finally because we know
right,
that behind the scenes there's been enough little like pissing match on Twitter. Yeah.
yeah." There's always that. I'll let Ian get into the details of that, but it quickly I realized it was not as cordial as I thought it was. But by that point, I had already sent the picture out to like five people, which one of them actually brought it back on a group chain and was like, "Who leaked the picture?" And I was like, "Well, why is that guy here? I didn't send it to him." And the other person was like, "Ooh," I was like, well, so now there's a whole different
Second
tangent
chain of
that
people
it
who
may
got
have come.
texted the photo off of the
Yeah, it's
original
like
chain.
it's like Doc Brown explaining the alternate 1985 and Back to the Future, where it just breaks off this way. I did not. I stopped taking pictures once I realized it was more adversarial than I thought, and you know, at some point you want to let your friend, he's an adult, handle his business. But I was nearby should intervention be needed and
No
should
doubt.
some protection be needed. So they finished their conversation, and
The rest is
next thing I
history. The rest
know,
is internet lore.
here comes Brian McCarthy, NFL PR guy, introducing me to Justin was his name. Justin, he's with NFL Security. I said, "Oh, we're there
Here
already."
we
Okay.
go. Real quick, that happened. Um, to just close the loop on it because the story has passed.
Yeah.
Uh, it's funny because we love we love this stuff, media on media. Like
Yeah.
when I see as annoying when you're in the middle of it, and we've been in the middle of it with other reporters, like you hate it and it's everything, but like from afar when it doesn't involve you, it's kind of funny. It's just ridiculous. The fact that it happened in front of a Starbucks, and I said this on Bill Simmons' podcast today. That JW Marriott Starbucks to me is the hell of
That's your
the earth.
spot. Yeah.
It's like Sodom and Gomorrah. It is like First and First, like on Seinfeld, or like it's like Times Square. It is. And for that to go down there was probably 100 people in the vicinity when that happened.
Oh, there was a lot. Yeah. I don't know how many saw it or knew exactly who was having a conversation. There were enough. I mean, so we came out of a meeting. It was the NFL ops meeting, and Ian had just planted himself there for an hour because that's the crossroads of everything. You get to see as many
Yes.
people, and you get to check a bunch of boxes for
And I
people
think
that you haven't
Sean
seen yet.
Payton sits there from Monday to Sunday, just sits there at a table if you want to talk to Sean Payton. Yeah, that's it. He's always just permanently sat there. Yep.
There you go. Okay, I didn't know that. So we come out of the meeting and Ian's still there, and he was talking to somebody that I had. I said, "Well, let me." I had to fire off. Here's what came out of the NFL ops meeting: the overtime changes, the virtual
The chain
line to
gang.
gain. Yeah, exactly. The chain game. So I had to fire. So let me just sit here and do that, and then So I'm waiting for Ian to finish his conversation and firing this stuff off. And I look up, and here comes Jordan, and I said, "Okay." Jordan's going for who Ian was talking to. And I said, but I don't know if he sees Ian there. No, he went right he went right for him. And then whoever they were talking to peeled off, and it was just the two of them, and everybody's kind of around. And it didn't hit me till 10 minutes later that it happened in front of a Starbucks. I actually looked at the picture and I was like, this happened in front of a Starbucks. It occurred
It's
to me
incredible.
finally with the look. And I said, I got to win a I better win a Pulitzer for this picture. I probably won't, but at
Got the
least
logo right
call
in the
me a finalist.
background. I know that giant. What is that logo? It's a mermaid. Like, what is the Starbucks logo? It's a woman.
Yeah.
What is it?
I don't know. I've definitely looked it up and I've checked it before and it just
Yeah.
escaped my memory and was replaced by the I don't know the millions per year for each position of the franchise tag probably.
Yeah, yeah. That's in your brain. Siri, what is the Starbucks? Hold on, let me get this here.
Okay.
Sorry. Siri, what
We can
is the
say
Starbucks
hey
logo?
Siri.
Oh, hey
No, hey
Siri.
Siri. Yeah.
Hold on. This is good. This is good radio. I'm sure a lot of people are tantalizing here. But I think at home you're wondering,
It's like
Hey Siri, what is the Starbucks logo?
this is like Francesa when he counts. So he goes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
All
8,
right.
9, 9.
All right.
What do you got?
The Starbucks logo. Oh, it's evolving. Wait, now it takes me to like a Starbucks like PR site. Oh, this might not be worth it. Digi Insights. The Starbucks logo. The famous siren, which of course from Greek mythology is a female who sings and lures you in,
Hmm.
sits seductively at the center of the
Yeah.
Starbucks cup, defines the brand today. The Starbucks logo is synonymous with more than tasty coffee. It's about the entire experience of getting one and drinking one. When someone walks by with that logo on a Starbucks cup, there are associations made around people's backgrounds and lifestyles. There's something mysterious and yet simple in the siren's face. She lures millions of coffee lovers into Starbucks. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow, the allure of caffeine is
Yeah.
what that siren is singing. Odysseus could not resist the siren's
Now,
song.
now,
Yeah.
traditional Seattle natives and longstanding Seattle residents and natives tell me that they don't drink Starbucks.
No, well, the same
They're
men
anti-Starbucks.
apparently moved the
Yeah.
Supersonics to Oklahoma
Well,
City, so I don't think they're thrilled about that. They had Kevin Durant for a hot minute, then before we know it, that's that. All right. So that was the Rappaport. And then I told Ian, I'm like, dude, there's a lot of ways you could play this. And I think Ian kind of played it right, where he was like tongue in cheek fun about it, but also wasn't looking to have it. And then like the rest of like McAfee and Eisen, they were just hammering it. And then it got kind of played out, and I was like, all right, the story's over. But there was a window in time where Ian could have leveraged that into a Dunkin' Donuts play. He could have leveraged that into a coffee bean play. He could have done a lot of things, and I think he might have missed the boat, but it's probably better off long term. You don't want to capitalize on being in an altercation or verbally accosted at the combine, right?
Well, the next day he was talking about Duncan on the
I
McAfee
saw.
show
I saw.
and
By the
giving it
way,
away for
look what I'm
yeah, there you
drinking.
go. That's
Ironically,
it.
the Starbucks. Yeah,
Giving it away for free. I was like, that's unlike Ian.
I know.
Why would he do that, right?
I
But
know.
I
I think
guess
there was a play.
maybe he was laying the groundwork. You give him a little bit and you hope for a lot more in return. That would be amazing if he gets on that deal and unveils it, let's say at the draft. There's enough time
Oh,
to get that done before then. It would be amazing. It would be
it would be
outstanding.
huge. All right, so I started off this thing in a monologue just talking about how I think there's a lot of teams that need quarterbacks, and there might not be enough quarterbacks available, which means come the draft, as much as we want to, talk about Shador slipping out of the first and all this stuff, like what happens. They all get bumped up, and we'll see where we land out. As we head to free agency, I'm going to throw out a couple names for you, and just give me your armchair quarterback slash insider read on how these situations could go down, and really some fun stuff about like we'll just banter back and forth on like how the situation could play out. So the
Hmm.
first name's Darnold, and I think going back to the Vikings on a smaller,
Yeah.
not huge number, like makes sense for both sides. But is there a stalking horse that might blow Darnold away, or is there a chance where Darnold actually does get that $50 million contract somewhere?
No, and I think I know that the Vikings not tag they were asking questions back at the Senior Bowl. It was like, hey, the Vikings are asking what are you hearing about Darnold out there? They wanted to know if there was a team that was gonna, and they never really truly wouldn't know. It would be more of a leap of faith, but
Yeah.
in their mind, the number at 40 to tag him was too high, and he wasn't going to get there. And I think they were right. I mean, if Stafford had gone elsewhere. And maybe that opens up the Rams. Maybe that's a little bit different. But the fact that Stafford stayed put, now you're seeing some of these other guys potentially stay put. And I don't know that Vegas is that high on Sam Darnold, which would be the other place that he could potentially go to. Then going back to New York, if he goes to the Giants, I mean, obviously not the Jets. I mean, my fever dream was he would go to the Jets,
Oh
which would
my
just be
gosh.
awesome. I would
And
just love to
just
just see it. But
be
there's
great.
no way he was going to go back. And then in the end, the Vikings understand that Darnold knows what the best situation is for him. It's the
Yep.
one that every other quarterback wants right now.
Go
The
to Minnesota.
Vikings.
You got
Right.
Addison,
Yeah.
Jefferson, and Kevin O'Connell calling the shots. Like
So
that's
the
really
question
good.
is, how big of a cut do you take? And I think we all in our minds were thinking, well, he's going to be in the 40s. I don't know that he's going to get there.
No, no, no,
Certainly,
no.
yeah,
I would
certainly not
think
in
30 to
Minnesota.
40, right? Like 30 to
Yeah.
40.
So now you're to the point where it's like, all right, look, we understand, and you understand that we want to be here. How do we make this fair, right? I mean, I go back. There was a couple years ago, Nick Foles, after the Super Bowl with the Eagles, signed with the Jaguars for 22, which was a big number at the
At the
time.
time, it was huge.
And they were really sort of bidding against themselves, right? There was nobody else out there, but it's like you can't sign a quarterback for, at the time, I don't know, 15, and then say, oh, here's our new franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
You had to make it respectable, right? You
Dude,
sort of
great
have to,
analogy. I remember that whole
yeah,
situation. It was like we had to pay him that because we wanted to show our faith in him and our confidence
yeah,
in him. And it was
yeah. And
almost like PR as well, you know?
yeah, and you want him to be happy about it, and you want him to feel good about the new start that he's in. Now, Darnold would be an extension. So look, he proved himself in a way last year. Now it's time for the double prove, right? Like now it's time to prove that what happened at the end was an aberration, right? Now I can
Yep.
play consistently through the end of the season and maybe even raise my game at the right period at the right time, and then hope for better options next year because there's not a lot of great options out there. Whether it's
No.
Giants, Jets,
We'll get through it. But like, here's my
yeah,
thing. Like, all right. So those two games in a matter of 8 days, I could argue it cost Sam Darnold more money than any player in the history of the NFL.
what was it before? In your mind, it was 50 before that, and it wound
I
up
thought it
being
was
30.
50. I thought,
Yeah,
you have Tennessee, you got Pittsburgh, and then
yeah,
it's like these teams are like, I don't know. Like I'm sure there were teams, and
yeah,
I don't think there's a market right now besides
yeah.
Minnesota. But if it gets to a certain point, numbers wise, maybe it perks up. But like, this is my other question to you. I can't help but think that this is at least a window into they're not as high and over the moon over JJ McCarthy as everyone has been saying all season.
Yeah, I think there's an element of that. I also believe that maybe he played, at least for a period of time last year, above their expectations. Darnold, that is,
Hmm.
right? And so you want to sort of run that back because if McCarthy doesn't beat him out, right? If you bring him back and he doesn't beat him out, and if you're paying him 30 million, it's gonna be tough. Like the tie is gonna go to Sam
Yeah.
Darnold in that situation. But if McCarthy doesn't beat him out, you want to make sure you have the best possible solution at the quarterback position. So it's a delicate balance, right? Like you're still sort of committed to McCarthy, and I know that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah really was looking forward to let's get a good quarterback on a rookie deal, which allows us the flexibility to
Yeah.
spend elsewhere. Well, that sort of went out the window when he didn't play his rookie year. Because now, let's say he plays next year or this upcoming season, and he plays the year after that. You're only getting 2 years at that point because he's going to want
Totally.
an extension at that point. So that window sort of got muddled a little bit.
I also think you bring in Darnold for whatever 30, 35. Let's say that. You have JJ on the rookie deal. If they both play well or they both are doing well in camp, you could still trade either one of them
Yeah,
into one of these
yeah,
quarterback needy teams. And
yeah.
Darnold's contract is not so prohibitive where it would be like that's a crippling contract for a team to
Yeah.
take on.
Coincidentally, Darnold could wind up being Sam Bradford, who was traded to Minnesota
Jeez.
when Teddy Bridgewater got hurt in
September.
training camp.
Remember
How about
that?
that one?
That was training
Yeah.
Labor Day. That was it. Philly had Wentz. Philly had who else? It was
Oh,
Wentz
I know exactly who else because it was
and
Chase Daniel.
Sanchez. Or it was Chase Daniel. That's who it
And I know
was.
why, because they went from Wentz jumped over Chase Daniel, who had gotten a really good deal. He got
Yeah,
7 million as the backup. And it's like, wait a minute, you had Bradford for because they signed, I think they signed Daniel first and then Bradford. I forget how it was, but it was like there's like $47 million invested in your quarterback, which was a ton at the
at the
time.
time. No, yeah,
And then so they jumped Daniel. And I remember reporting that day that Daniel was pissed, right?
yeah.
And Chase, I got a call from his agent or whatever, and Chase was pissed off, and I
Who
talked to
was
him in
the
the locker
agent?
room.
Do you remember?
Was it Jeff Nally? Maybe
Sounds
Jeff
right.
Nally.
I don't know.
And
Yeah,
so
one of those
I
guys.
so next time I'm down in the locker room, I said, "Hey Chase, can we talk?" And we go outside the locker room. We talk. He's like, "Yeah, but you made it seem like." Yeah, I said, were you pissed? He goes, yeah, I was pissed. Like, I want to start. I want to be the guy. And I was like, well, that's all I said. He goes, yeah, but like, you made it seem like
I was a
I wasn't going
malcontent.
to be
Yeah,
supportive of Carson. I said, I didn't say that. All I said was you were disappointed. You want to be the starter. You're a competitive guy. You should be pissed. And so
yeah,
we had a great conversation. And he's now in the media and he's doing a nice job.
yeah. He's doing fine. All right. So that's Vikings. All right. The listeners on this podcast are often Jets and Giants fans. Let's start with Giants because there's been a lot of reporting, a lot of stuff that's inaccurate that's been out there. I think you and I are both fairly plugged in with that market and fairly plugged in
Yeah.
with that team. I think there was a lot of truth to they were in on the Stafford talk. There were parameters to trades being talked
Mhm.
about with the Rams. And then once Thursday hit and the Rams kind of ghosted everybody and they were like, all right, Friday morning it's going to be Stafford talking with McVay. It was a done deal and they already had been pivoting. So they weren't left at the altar. They were just engaging in everything. What leaves them now is the third pick, which means they can't just sit there and get Cam Ward and talk of Rodgers, which from what I gather, isn't out of pocket and is also a very real possibility considering
Mhm.
what the number might be and the thought that he wasn't so bad last year. Teammates like him, and he and Dable kind of playing with a chip on both of their shoulders this year. Let's team up and let's do this thing together.
He's one of the best options out there. I mean, I know it
He
wasn't a great
is.
season with the Jets, but look around. It's not a great, and it's not going to cost you a ton of money.
Yeah.
He's going to have to make a decision at this point because we talked about, him being a possibility with the Rams, and somebody mentioned to me he wants to go to San Francisco. I'm like, well, but San Francisco's paying Purdy. That's never going to happen. And then somebody else said, well, I know he wants to go to Minnesota potentially if they're interested in him. And it's like, well, no, it's just they've got other options there. And then it's like, well, at some point, do I want to continue playing? And if I do, it might have to be with the Giants. He has said he's willing to mentor a young guy. He did that with Zach Wilson, or tried to do that with Zach
He
Wilson.
did.
So he is open to doing that. It's not like he's some kind of selfish guy who's not going to help out. I don't know if he has any relationship with Cam Ward, what he thinks of him, or any of that stuff. He's just going to have to get to a point where he goes, you know what? Am I willing to go back into the New York market? Am I willing to play with a team that, are we picking the Giants to win the Super Bowl? Peter Schrager, who's done a great job of picking the Super
No.
Bowl winner, probably
But
not going to have them.
I also picked Rodgers to be MVP and win the AFC East, so I've been
It
burned by that
happens.
one.
I was optimistic that he was going to bounce
I
back
thought it'd
and
be
play much
great.
better. He was banged up also early in the
Coming off an
year.
Achilles with a bad
Yeah,
foot.
yeah. So, I know it's an option there. I got to see if Aaron's willing to make. That's the part I can't really put into place right now. Is if he's willing to go there and to play, and even if you do, you got to do something in this draft. I mean, you need your quarterback of the future. It sucks that you lost to the Colts, right?
It
Like you,
sucks.
you,
It
you
sucks.
can't lose that
Drew
game.
Lock looked like Joe
Or win that game,
Montana.
excuse me. It was a loss in the draft order, but it was a win. You can't win that game. You just can't win that game.
Malik Neighbors going to the Hall of Fame after that game.
I would,
mean,
I would say, because John Mara always wants to win. He's anti-tanking. But I would say if John Mara had told Brian Dable and Joe Shane before that game that you guys are going to be safe no matter what, maybe a different outcome in that game.
yeah, yeah. All right, so Rodgers, and then maybe Shador at 3 if he's there, or you trade back and you get Jackson Dart, or or you wait for Tyler Shuck in the second round, or Quinn Ewers. Like, I think they have to draft a quarterback, and if they can't get Cam Ward, the pool is awfully shallow this year in the draft class.
I wonder then what they do at 3. They have talked about how they've had good meetings and good interactions with Shador Sanders. Coming out of the combine, a lot of rumblings that he's no longer a top 10 guy in the minds of evaluators and teams around the league. It only takes one team, though. It does. So I hate to kind of like say, because if 9 out of 10 teams are telling you, no, forget it, he ain't going in the top 10. It was kind of like Jalen Carter with that situation.
Right.
Like, no, we are not taking this guy in the top 10. Well, the Eagles were the team that said we are taking him in the top 10.
And
I
will tell you, there were teams that told me he's not on their board, and then they drafted him, and the Eagles got him, and now everyone's like, well, they should have taken Jalen Carter. Well, trust me, the stuff coming out of Georgia was not good.
Yeah. So it's hard to paint this stuff with broad strokes here, but I just feel like, at 3, if they're at 3 and it goes Cam Ward 1, whether it's to Tennessee or somebody else, and then it's Abdul Carter, and you're sitting there and you got Travis Hunter in front of you who could be an impact player on 2 sides of the ball. Yeah. It's hard to pass him up for a guy at that point that, a lot of folks are thinking maybe he's not worthy of that 3 pick. I know that there's supporters in that building for Jackson Dart in well-positioned places with that team. So,
and there's a history there. There's a lineage. There's an Ole Miss quarterback. They had that with Eli, and like Jackson Dart was the #1 high school recruit in the country. Went to USC. Transfers to Ole Miss. He's won 10 games the last 2 years. It's not like he's some stiff or a bust. Like Jackson Dart can play.
Yeah, I think that there's members of that coaching staff that feel like he'd be a good fit for what they want to do offensively. So we'll see. And then if you add the veteran piece, which they're going to at some point, if you add the veteran piece, gives you a little bit of comfortability that at least, maybe we can win with this guy this year because they've got to win. They've got to win. I mean, when they retain both of these guys, I said, I know what happens next. John Mara comes out and basically says that the way that I phrased it, and people were calling me, there's no playoff mandate. Okay, there's no
That's
playoff
the
mandate.
expectation.
But at the end in the last couple of weeks of this upcoming season, we better be talking more about playoff positioning than we are about draft positioning for the Giants, because if that's the case, we know what's going to happen.
Am I crazy that I look at their roster and I don't think they're that far off though?
There's talent, right? There is talent, and
like, I sound like a loon, but I look at their front seven and I'm like, all right, between Lawrence and Burns and Thibodeau, and then you look at their offensive line if Andrew Thomas is healthy, and then you got Tracy and Neighbors, and like there's talent. It's there, just they don't have a quarterback.
Yeah, Neighbors and Tracy were the first rookie tandem since 2006, I want to say. It was Marquez Colston. Maybe it was even earlier than that. I think it was 2006.
Reggie Bush and Marquez Colston?
Yeah, that's right. It was 06. Reggie Bush and Marquez Colston, the first to go for 1,000 total yards each. And I think if Tracy had gotten 1,000 yards rushing, they would have been the first duo to ever do that. So they've got guys that can play. They'll add some pieces in free agency. The question is how much depth is there? Because they had their rookie class last year. They had 4 or 5 guys that wound up playing a bunch. And it's like, look at all these. And it's like, well, did they play so much because they were good?
Or
did they play so much because you got nothing else and you needed to play these guys?
Yeah, like Newbin played well. Phillips played well. Like they were happy with those guys.
Johnson, the tight end, Theo Johnson.
Theo Johnson. Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm biased because I like him as a guy and I've known him for years. But like, I saw someone posted like when Saquon got the new deal, like Joe Shane has to be rolling in his grave. Like Joe Shane has to be, you just kicking or punching the air. I'm like, Saquon wasn't having the season he had in Philly as a New York Giant, and I don't think if they had to do it over again, the Giants would still have Saquon on the roster. Like I don't think you have to keep on pounding the Giants over letting Saquon walk. That was best for both sides.
Well, the question you got to ask is going back
a year ago, the Daniel Jones year, yes.
Right? Would they have
yes.
tagged or would they have extended Saquon and tagged Daniel?
Yes.
And even at the point where they tagged Saquon in March. And then had a chance to do a deal in July, and they weren't far apart. They were close.
No.
Like at that point, would you do that moment differently? Because after that, then that was it. Once they got into that last season, like it was never going to happen. He was never coming back.
It was done. Okay, Browns real quick. Schefter comes out and says, the one thing I know is the Browns are drafting a quarterback, but it might not be that clean. I know that's Adam just taking a shot in February. It doesn't really mean he's putting his name on it for March and April, but it did perk everyone's eyes up. I don't think Deshaun Watson's the quarterback moving forward. I know Flacco's no longer there, and he's been gone 2 years. And like, I don't think they're going to roll out the UCLA kid, who I forget his name, who played a bunch of snaps this season. So they do need a quarterback, but like, there's very little chatter about what the Browns are doing at 2. Everyone just assumes they're going to have a quarterback, but who's that quarterback going to be?
Well, they're doing a good job because I've talked to at least 1, 2, 3 agents in the last day who have all said like
their guys going
we're an option. We got a shot at the Browns, and I'm like, okay, so I don't think it's all 3 of you. So they're doing a good job of getting.
And that's just the veteran guys, not the rookies, right?
Which is good because they all sounded excited about it. So if you're Andrew Berry, you got to feel good about the fact that multiple guys feel good about you being there, and maybe that'll help Myles Garrett feel better. But their options are, and it might be. It might be if it's Kirk Cousins here. We'll get. I know we're jumping around. We'll go right to Cousins here.
Yeah,
I don't think Cousins happens anytime. Nothing quickly. I think that's through the draft.
Okay.
Because Cousins last year went and signed with a team, and then that team drafted somebody.
Yep.
So unless it's like Pittsburgh. Where's Pittsburgh's pick? That's late in the first round, right?
20th.
So maybe Pittsburgh, but even then you're risking the chance that they could potentially take somebody there. So Kirk Cousins learned his lesson last year. I think he's going to play hardball. He's got that no trade clause.
Yeah.
Atlanta's saying they're going to sit on him, so they'll sit on him for a while, and then through the draft, then I think he's going to make his decision. I think at that point, you'll see what's going to happen with Cousins.
Someone told me if they were to cut Kirk Cousins, which they won't, he would have had 1 year for $90 million on the Atlanta Falcons. What a deal!
Well, there's offset. Like he could get paid going forward, and they could offset. So look, he's got he's got leverage in this case. He
Yeah.
knows what the deal says. He knows what the situation that Atlanta's in. Anyway, I mentioned him for the Browns because if Cleveland wants to do that, they could potentially see what happens through the draft and then circle back on Cousins. There's not enough. You mentioned it. There's not enough quarterbacks out there
Who are
to
the
fill all
guys?
these seats capably. So I think if you're Cousins, you're comfortable waiting because at that point now you've got a team that we had 3 free agency trades, the draft. We really didn't get what we needed. We want to explore this option at this point.
All right, we're gonna wrap quickly, but I want to give you a couple more teams. Jets, I have no
Yeah,
idea. I mean, I've heard Justin Fields,
Fields. Yeah,
but I think Steelers are. I think if
yeah,
Fields has his choice, he's going to stick in Pittsburgh over going to the Jets and another rebuilding thing. But who knows? We'll see. I mean, money
yeah.
talks. But if it's not Justin Fields, they can't go back to Rodgers. They can't go back to Darnold. They're too far back in the draft to get Cam Ward. They have all these star players at different positions, but they have a giant gaping hole at quarterback. Could they really roll out Tyrod Taylor as their quarterback next year?
I mean, you keep saying these names. At what point do you get to the level of Tyrod Taylor where you go, okay, well,
Yeah,
we got him
we
right
got him.
here,
He's
and
fine. Yeah.
there are other options. I mean, you could draft a guy late, maybe he develops while you're setting yourself up potentially to draft a guy next year as well. So there are other options. I mean, have we mentioned Daniel Jones yet? Like
No,
Daniel
Daniel
Jones is going to be
Jones
out
is a
there.
name. Russell Wilson, and then
Yeah,
a name
they're
that
not great options, but
they're
they're options.
not. A
Right.
name that I keep getting told by teams that are like, well, you could always go to that next year. You're gonna laugh, but Jarrett Stidham's name keeps on coming up. Stiddy, like, well, if you miss out on all of them, Stidham can at least hold the fort. And you're like, geez, are we really talking about? I mean, I guess, like, but that's where we're at.
Yeah, yeah. I think Daniel Jones, I've heard his name connected to the Indianapolis Colts a bunch, which would make sense for him, right? That's a spot for him. Although they do, from what I heard, Indy does want a guy potentially that could help Anthony
Yeah,
Richardson. They
who's
could
done
show,
it?
Daniel Jones not going to go in there and say, "Let me help this guy." No, they're going to go in there and say,
No,
"Let me
it's a
beat this guy
competition.
out." So Indy's got to walk that fine line of we got to get somebody here who's going to help him out, but we also, if he's not the guy, if we eventually this year go, you know what, we're out on Anthony Richardson, we need somebody that can win because again, just like the Giants, they're in a position where they have to win to make a
Come
statement to keep
on.
their jobs in 26.
I saw Chris Ballard doing media again this week. I'm like, this guy just keeps on, and it's like, you got to hit one of these quarterbacks after all these years.
Yeah.
All right. Raiders, so many cooks in the kitchen from afar. I look at this thing and it's like, you've got Brady now involved. You got Chip who's got an opinion. You got Spytech who's going to try to be involved. You got Pete who's
Yeah.
got an opinion. Of course, Pete has history with both Russell Wilson and Geno Smith. If they want to do a trade there, Brady's got his thoughts on these quarterbacks. Like, what do the Raiders do? And they've got the 6th overall pick. Again, just out of the Cam Ward window where you could just sit and wait and take one.
Yeah, they made their push for Stafford. I thought for a hot minute that they had a real shot
So did
there
I.
to make
So
it
did
happen.
I.
And I think that was an incredible disappointment when that didn't happen for them. You mentioned, it's funny you mentioned Geno Smith. At some point, Seattle's got to decide, like, do we want to extend this guy
They
or
keep
do we,
kicking the can on this guy. He's been there 5
yeah.
years. It was 1 year deal, 1 year deal, 1 year deal, 1 year deal,
And
2 year
his
deal, 1 year
value,
deal.
if you're going to trade him, his value is not higher than it is right now. It's never going to be. I
Sure.
mean, he's getting older. And so I know that there's interest from Pete Carroll on that, but he's got to convince John Spytek, who's in charge as the general manager. So keep an eye on that one. That could be an interesting one. They've got a bunch of irons in the fire there. I think it's more Russ wants to get to Vegas than Vegas wants Russ to get there, right? Which even last year, when Russ visited the Giants, that was initiated by Russell Wilson. Right? And the
I
Giants,
believe he flew himself there, from what I'm told. Is
there
right.
you go.
That is, whatever that's. But then we're laughing. Russ could be a quarterback for the New York Giants week 1 this season. The way it's working, like all
Yeah.
the carousel.
Yeah.
All right, and then my last one. It's like I mentioned Stidham, and we mentioned Daniel Jones, but like then you've got like the Carson Wentz, the Jimmy Garoppolos. Like, is there a wild card in this thing that like the Taylor Heineke's? Like one of these
Yeah.
guys is going to get more money than you expected, and it's going to be like the Darnold deal. Like people forget. Darnold signed a 1 year, $10 million contract with the Vikings, and a lot of people around the league were rolling their eyes, being like, $10 million for Darnold? And it's
Yeah.
like, it's one of these guys is going to get a deal. Like, is there a name that we're not thinking about in the quarterback room?
I'll mention Wentz. Kansas City wants Wentz back. Apparently, he had a
Okay.
really good year. And Andy Reid told him, "We'd love to have you back. Similar deal or whatever. But you deserve a shot to go be a starter again." It's not an unquestioned starter. It's not a franchise guy, but it's one of these situations like you're talking about. And if anybody calls Andy Reid, I mean, maybe it's not somebody in the division if it's the Raiders who we're talking about. But if anybody calls Andy Reid, he'll tell them that, and he will. Andy's pretty good about helping his players, get better opportunities if the better opportunity winds up being elsewhere. So, keep an eye on Wentz. It wouldn't surprise me. Jimmy Garoppolo, I think the Rams would like to have him back.
Yeah.
A similar situation to Wentz, like they'd like to have him back. Okay, but let's go see what else is out there, because there's just not enough good, capable quarterbacks that are going to fill all these starting jobs potentially, or these bridge jobs. So keep an eye on the two of those guys. If one of them starting week 1, wouldn't surprise me.
All right, and then ending this thing, Cam Ward got great reviews, all comment. Shador, it seems like it's kind of split and polarized.
Yeah.
Is there a nugget you have on Shador that's worth sharing to this audience? Because every fan base is going to try to talk themselves into Shador, even though he's getting trashed by a lot of people in the media right now.
Yeah, but I when I talk to Jet fans, not 100%, but I hear a lot of people. Yeah, I hear a lot of them go, at that point, take a shot, right? At that point.
If he's sitting there at 7, yeah, sure.
Yeah, like if they're saying, well, if we're the Giants and we're up at 3 and we need a quarterback and we're desperate, like we can't do that. But it's a new regime, and if he lasts that long, we're good with taking a shot on him at that point. We'll see. I don't know. I don't have enough of that feel. I know that there's, the whole interview thing. Oh, he came in and what did you expect? Like, what he's about. And I don't think he's a bad dude.
No, he's not.
He said in an interview with Jane Slater at the Shrine Bowl, our friend Jane Slater, he's like, what people don't know about me is I'm a pretty humble guy. And he had this huge chain on, some diamonds everywhere. And he goes, I'm a pretty humble guy, as it flashed in the lights. I do think that there is a level of humility to him. He's been around his dad and the family, and we know how Deion thinks, and Deion's thing is not just acting that way to act that way. It's about empowerment. It's always been about empowerment.
It's always been that way, and I respect it. And I also would say this: say what you want about Shador, and like whether he came off as arrogant or cocky or cocksure, like you kind of need that as a quarterback. And also, he got the absolute crap kicked out of him for 2 years at Colorado, and that guy just got up and kept playing football. And I think that goes a lot further. It's not like he's been a diva quarterback with all pros at every position. Yes, Travis Hunter was there, but Shador was playing behind a different offensive line than the one that Quinn Ewers and Will Howard have been playing behind.
Yeah, and some might say, though, that some of those shots were unnecessary. He should have got rid of the ball quicker, which is going to be a part of his development in the NFL. We saw from Caleb. Caleb tried to escape through the back of the pocket. It's a lot harder to do in the NFC North than it is in the Pac-12. So
I'll say this. I know it was the combine, so everyone's watching, and Deion's the dad, but Rich Eisen's talking about, and Shador and this, and like, who's your favorite, and Stacey Dale's there with him, and who's your favorite, who's Deion's favorite kid, rank him. And Deion's tweeting right at the show, and like, that stuff's real. Deion is, he's up. He's got a big voice. He's universally respected, and whether or not it's insecurity or whatever, but like some teams might just look at all that and say, I'm trying to provide for my family. I'm a GM. I'm a coach. Like, I don't want that. Yeah. And that's real, as negative as that sounds. And that sucks for the kid, but like that, there might be those who are scared of taking on not only, a player that we're not sure is going to be an all pro or whatever, a quarterback, but also all that comes with it, whether that should be positive or negative.
Plus a head coach who goes, if we draft this guy, is Deion going to be looking over my shoulder as, I'm going to take, because he already said, like, if he coaches in the NFL, I forget the exact quote, but he wants to coach his kids. Yeah, exactly.
Multiple.
So,
Multiple.
A whole lot to it, Peter.
You're on the Insiders Show, 7 p.m. Eastern. Every day. You do awesome work. I really love you. And also free agency next week is going to be probably wall to wall for you. What's the schedule?
Yeah, we're Monday we start on Sunday. We've got free agency frenzy Monday, I believe, all day, Tuesday all day. Are you joining us? You better be joining us for this coverage. We need
they don't ask me.
I'm asking you, Peter. I'm going to make it happen.
What can I offer? I'll offer you a couple nuggets here and there that I get, but you guys got it pretty good. You
got more than you let on, Peter. We all know that. We all know that.
Here's my question though. The Sunday show is just to kind of set the table, and then Monday they can actually legally tamper. But we usually know that legally, like that's when we start firing off the sources indicate they have intentions to sign, right?
Yeah, you can reach a verbal agreement. They changed that. The NFL kind of sort of did this and said, well, we're tampering, so we're going to open up a legal window where you can talk. And then all of a sudden during that period, they were having negotiations and finalizing deals. So the NFL said, well, we're just going to make that the point at which you can talk and finalize deals. And
So what time is that? That's 12 Eastern
it's
Monday?
so Wednesday moved up to Monday. I think it's
Good.
12 Eastern on
Okay.
Monday.
All right.
So basically now it's like, well, they tamper ahead of the tampering window. So it's like it just all it did was move it up
Yeah.
a couple of days. But I remember our coverage the first year when they did this, they were stunned by the number of deals that were
I
being
remember.
done, and we weren't wall to wall. And then the next year it was like, well, we got to be on for 12 hours
Well,
straight.
I'll
On
tell you what
Monday.
it was. It was we didn't know how this was going to go down because I was a part
Yeah.
of it. Monday and Tuesday, every deal was down, and then Wednesday, every deal was already done. And it was like, "Welcome to free agency
Welcome to
frenzy."
free.
It's
Yes.
done.
Yeah. So we
Um,
adjusted our coverage here.
Give me
Yeah.
your favorite free agent, like a guy that you got this whole list of free agents. I'm going to give you my guy, who I think is one of my favorite players in the NFL. That I don't know what his market is, but I can't wait to see how it works out. Who's yours?
Are we going under the radar, or are we
Yeah,
going?
either one. You could say whoever
I
you
mean,
want.
like Milton Williams is fascinating to me, and I think he's going to make a ton of money as a defensive tackle. There's
I'll give
who's
you
the
mine.
guy? Go ahead. Go ahead.
My favorite player on the Chiefs for multiple years, I think Nick Bolton being a free agent is fascinating. I
That's a
love
good one.
watching that guy. He's a scud missile. I think he's great. And I
Yeah.
don't know, linebackers don't make the money that they used to make, but like I just am curious to see where he ends up because so many times these Chiefs guys, and whether it be Willie Gay or L'Jarius Sneed, they end up on these crap teams and they just go vanish into the night. And it's like, well, they got the money and like we're happy for him, but like, where does Nick Bolton go? Because that guy, I only picture him playing in huge games.
Yeah. It's I mean, it's not a sexy
Oh,
class,
dude,
right?
the draft and free agency is kind of blech.
Yeah, it's
But I'm
really
here to
not.
hype it up.
No, we're gonna do it. Like Nick Westbrook Akine is an interesting one, right? Like
Yeah,
he
like he had
had
a
so
good
many
year, but
he had
like,
so
is
many
he good?
touchdowns last year. Like, is that guy gonna hit big? And who's all right, I'll give you my sleeper free agent.
Yeah,
Who's the guy that I was being told is gonna actually surprise people
I love
in the
this.
edge? Oh, God,
Let's do up over under on this.
you want to do an over under?
Well, because I
Like
remember
money
when,
wise?
yeah, okay. Well, I don't know because the new salary cap, it's all gonna be bunched up, but I'll never forget. I forget what year was it? There was a guy, and it was like we all were just like, what? Like what? Oh, it was the wide receiver. It was Sammy Watkins making what he got from the Chiefs that year. It was probably 2017, and it came out of nowhere. And Sammy Watkins got this massive deal from the Chiefs, and we were like, all
Yeah.
right, I guess that's it. Like,
So the one guy that I was somebody mentioned this to me, Dayo Odeyingbo from the Colts, that this guy's going to make a ton of money.
and this is not his agent telling you this.
No. That's what when it's the agent, it's like, all right, you take it with
Yeah.
a grain of salt here. But I don't even know if Dayo
It's okay.
Odeyingbo, if that dude makes a ton of money, I will tip my cap to the person that told me that. But Patrick Jones from the Vikings is the guy that
I
I've
don't even know
heard
who
a
that
couple
is.
of times.
Patrick Jones, not Daniel.
Yeah,
Patrick.
Patrick Jones from the Vikings, not Daniel Jones. Yeah, who makes more money, Patrick or Daniel Jones?
Put a
It's going to be
poll
a
up.
race to the finish.
Put a poll
Uh,
up. Who makes
but-
more in free agency, Daniel Jones or Patrick Jones?
Daniel Jones or Patrick Jones. But Patrick Jones from the Vikings, from what I heard, is going to have a lot of interest. Is a guy that can show that he can do a bunch of different things, and that guy could surprise people. So there you go. There's my
I love
surprise
it.
free agent.
All right, everybody, tune into NFL Network, and when Patrick Jones gets drafted, tweet me and Mike. It's at Mike Garafolo on Twitter.
Yeah,
I love you. Thanks for joining.
you got it. The off season with Peter Schrager. Love
Let's
to have him.
go. Appreciate you, dude.